Hello, hello, and welcome to Grandma's Wealth Wisdom, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the awesomeness. I've got a really awesome lady here with me today named Heather Simpson. Please welcome her. Hit the like button. Use the comments to say hi as we go throughout our conversation today. If you have questions, ideas, thoughts, we want to hear them. So put them in the chat. And a special thank you to everybody checking out the replay. So glad you're here. The comments are still open and you can share those things. So Heather's bio is in the description below. Let everyone read that. You don't need me to read it to you. But Heather, please tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes, where you're located, what brings you to life and your experience today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda. It's such a great opportunity to be here and connecting with you and your audience. I'm Heather Simpson. I'm located in the Pacific Northwest, just a stone's throw to Canada and just a little bit north of Seattle. And what I do is I'm a business consultant primarily for female brands, and I help women build sustainable businesses that they can create profit in, that they create a life that they love in, and help them build that to a really good place for themselves, because I see far too many women experiencing burnout and kind of throwing in the towel on business because they're just not prepared for business. And so they might be really skilled in their craft, but because there's a lack of information on building a truly profitable business that's built around them, I see a lot of burnout happen. So when I saw that happening over and over on my journey, I decided to focus all my efforts in on that and help women become really successful in something that they really love.
Yeah, love it. Okay. So I have a couple words that you use that I want you to define for us and kind of tell us why, like what those mean to you from your experience. First, sustainable. What does
Yes.
sustainable mean?
Sustainable to me means that it's something that we can continue to show up and do over time, that we don't experience that burnout in, that we're able to ride the waves of business, but also be making money while we're doing it, and not just making money, but keeping our money. And when I see women go and start to build out their dreams of owning their own business, we do it for a couple of different reasons, all centered around freedom. And that's freedom of time and freedom of money. And oftentimes we can nail the freedom of time thing down, but it's still a little sticky. And then the freedom of money kind of comes into play, where we constantly feel like we're putting in the hours, but we're not generating the money that we need to, or we're told that we need to be reinvesting back into our business over and over and over, especially at the beginning, to take any profit later on down the road. So we switched that up quite a bit, and just from the beginning show people a different way to be building business, so that they can do it for the long run, and it is sustainable for them and for their family or whatever home life situation that they're in, so they can continue to day in, day out build what they want to build and have that work with them in their life, as opposed to oftentimes we feel like it's working against us at some point, where we build something and then we're kind of running away from it as opposed to working with it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to come back a little bit to the how that works. But first,
Yes.
let's get to you mentioned burnout. That's kind of the consequence if we don't take this seriously, if we're not serious about building a sustainable business. Tell us
Yeah.
what that looks like, especially if someone's like, I don't know if I'm burnt out or not. How can you tell if you're on maybe going that direction or already there?
Yeah, burnout shows up in a lot of different ways for different people. I've seen it more so in the stress and anxiety realm. I see it when it starts to show up and be a little bit paralyzing to people, where they don't know how to move forward or what to even do to move forward. I see it in the self-sabotage that can kind of come into play, where there's some really exciting stuff that is starting to develop, but because the brand or the business hasn't been built around them, they've tried to adopt some other model that has been told to them that they have to do business in a certain way, then I see them start to do some self-sabotaging, which then leads to the why am I doing this, and kind of like throwing the hands in the air. So it can manifest in a lot of different ways for people. That's where I see it show up the most. And then sometimes in like health related things as well, or in the pressures of like maybe a personal relationship that you have with maybe a partner or a spouse. So it can show up in a lot of different ways. It kind of just depends on each individual and how they carry stress, how they work with stress. And for some people, a good amount of stress can fuel them to be achieving what they want to achieve. But when it starts to work against you, that's where we start to get the hints that we're getting close to a place that we really don't want to be. And that's where we have the clues and indicators of that burnout that's starting to approach.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what I hear you saying is that there's often clues. We just have to be able to pay attention to them and take some space to be like, yeah, that clue has been coming up, but I've been ignoring it. I need to give it some attention and see if
Yeah.
have that check in with ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Cool. And now, again, before we get to the how, I also want to know, what gives you your passion for working with women this way? Is it from personal experience, maybe someone you've known really well that's gone through a really rough time? There's all kinds of motivations people have.
Yeah.
Where does
Yeah.
yours come from?
So previous to my focus on just doing this, in my own company and just focusing with women, I worked in the real estate industry and always just gravitated towards helping people build their individual businesses. I never wanted to be my face on the sign and be the one to work with clients. I actually preferred to help people see their potential, see how they can build, again, a business that is in alignment with them, and then watch how that can change and impact their life. And so I just, from the beginning of my career, really, at 20 years old is when I started doing that and just started really gravitating towards people that needed help. And as I started to kind of rise in the ranks, if you will, of where that ended up getting me, I earned myself a position as a CEO of a startup company, and then did that on a massive level for all of the individual agents that were there as part of our company. And I've always just been motivated towards other people achieving the life that they want to achieve, and which helps me achieve the life that I want to achieve. So it's that's been kind of the progression of it over. I've just always gravitated towards it. And then when I saw the lack of support from me as a female CEO by the time I was 30, with not a lot of support for people like me in my position, in a very male-dominated industry, especially at the time. There's a lot more women in real estate now. I just really became very passionate at helping other people succeed because, back to burnout, I was experiencing some pretty hefty burnout in that position because I wasn't finding a way to fuel myself and recharge myself. And it was a constant drain, even though I loved what I was doing. And I was watching all of these people live up to their potential, and earn the income that they wanted to earn and have the lives they wanted to have and make the impact they wanted to have. I saw that gap in people in my position. And so that's when I really wanted to change focus of outside of real estate and into women-owned brands.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Love it. So a little bit of personal experience there, but also seeing that lack of support, which 100% there's, thankfully there's a lot more now than there was 5-10 years ago, but still total lack of, or not total, but much different support levels, right?
Big gap.
Yeah,
Yes, a big gap. Absolutely.
Great way to say that. Okay.
Yeah.
So what have you found to be some of the main ways that women who are creating brands, who are CEOs, that they need support or want support? And what does that look like?
For everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. And that's where I start with people, is really understanding who they are and what they're really strong at, right? So really acknowledging our strengths, giving ourselves permission to actually acknowledge that we do have strengths and things that we're really freaking good at, because a lot of times we want to downplay that a little bit, or we're afraid to sound too boastful, or we're bragging. But really getting women to understand, what are you a rock star at? What is that thing? Because that gives us the clues at the other areas then that we need help and support in. Because once we know what we're really good at, we can then see other things where we're not very good at and need the support in that way. And with personality types too, it really, that also plays into the type of business that you build. There's a lot of people that I help them build a face-to-face business with because that works best for them. Whereas other people like really love the vibe of being online. And so that's what we build for them. There's ways to leverage those over time and build out things that help them, not always have to trade time for dollars in that capacity, but when we build a brand around them, because we start with understanding what their strengths are and then break down where they need support because there's things that we're not strong at, right? We all have things that we need help and support with. That's a much easier place to start from and lead into, as opposed to telling ourselves that, oh, well, we should be good at this or we should be good at that. We already know what we're really good at. We already know where we struggle. So we have to stop forcing ourselves into things that just are not a good fit for us. Like if you are not good at writing marketing emails, you should leverage and hire that out. Right. Because it's never going to get done. Or you might be able to force yourself to get it done at the beginning because you have all the time to. But then naturally, as your business grows, you're going to gravitate towards the things that bring you joy and that you're really good at. And then you're going to stop doing that thing, which is then where we see people kind of ride the roller coaster in business and don't have that income stream coming in constantly and are just feeling a little all over the place, and it just feels like it's kind of getting out of control. So starting with strengths, first, foremost important thing to building that foundation to then understand where you do need support.
Cool. I love that. Building on your strengths rather than trying to improve weaknesses. Is that easier to do when someone's first starting, or are you coming in and helping existing ladies pivot? What, maybe a little bit of both? Is it the same tactic? Does it change depending where people are at? I'm kind of opening up a can of worms there.
Yeah. So I do work with both people that are just starting brand new or that have had an established business. Some people have like a massive team and have been able to build a massive team, but still are kind of missing the mark and like where they're really leaning into their strengths. So then we restructure some of the team to really help elevate them to their highest and best potential and use so that their business can grow and thrive, and that team, their jobs can grow and thrive with it as well. And then even from the beginning stages, we always lead with strength. So there's the very first time, that is the very first point in where we start with businesses. With established businesses, we kind of work through the pain points first because that gives us some clues. We already have a machine that's going, so we need to see where it's getting sticky. Business still has to operate and run. So we lead with strengths, but sometimes it takes just a little bit of discovery to get there. Whereas like with brand new business, we have a blank canvas, and so we can kind of start from the very beginning. The first question, lead with that.
Okay. Now, I'm going to shift in a minute to more money-related things because this is Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. But before we get there, anything else that you think are big pointers for like the how someone can create a woman that's building a brand can create a sustainable business and stay away from burnout of any way, shape, or form?
The biggest thing is that we always need to be learning and growing. And so we need to be leaders in that capacity. So my company name is She Leads Me, and that she indicates that future self of us that is leading us to our potential future, our potential capacity, the highest and best use of us. And so in order to really develop who that is, we need to be learning, growing, thriving. It is a constant self-development job. And there is that really fabulous quote that I read from a Navy SEAL that is, we don't rise to the challenge, we sink to the level of our training. And so we always need to be making sure that us as individuals, we're leading the way. We are constantly working on us, because if we're down here, we can't expect business to be up here. So we need to make sure that we are elevating who we are and how we're growing so that our business can meet us there. And we have to lead with that. And then we can lead our clients and the people that we're working with and everybody else around us. But it's an internal job that starts with us. And that leadership and ownership of that is super important for us to do. And that's an inside job.
Love it. Growth mindset, always be learning.
Yes.
And I didn't actually realize that the she leads me, the she is like our future selves. And
I know it's a
that's so,
nice little twist, isn't
yeah, I love it because
it? Yeah.
when we talk about grandma's wealth wisdom, we're thinking about like our grandmas, but it's also us as future grandmas or like grandma age. What are we
Mhm.
passing on to our next generation? And I love to ask people like, if you were 70 years old and writing a letter to yourself today, what would you want? To
Mm,
like, what would you
yeah,
be proud of? What would you want to be true, right? Over the next however many years till that
yeah.
happens. And
So that's a great
so
question.
that like
Mhm.
having that, like,
Yeah.
you have to do that for, like, 2 or 3 years down the road, maybe even 2 or 3 months down the road, but I
Mhm.
like, to expand that to long term is really, like, where I specialize, but,
Yeah.
um, let's talk about now, when you're doing this work with people, helping them create sustainable businesses, you probably have goals, ways to shift the, like,
Mhm.
day-to-day operations, that kinda thing. When does money come into the conversation, and what does that conversation look like?
Money comes into the conversation almost immediately because even if it is like a service based business where it's like, yes, we are there for other people, money has to come into the conversation. And we have to normalize that conversation more and more because people carry a lot of different things around money, shame that they want to make it, guilt that they have it. It's just this really interesting thing. And I'm sure in your journey too, like you just see that all the time.
Yep.
And so we talk about that from the beginning. And I know that you're somebody that's familiar with the profit first model,
Whoop, whoop.
Mike McAllowitz. Yeah. So it's a great way that we just help people from the get-go structure how they're receiving income in a way that builds the future for them and not just for their business, right? The people that are like, I haven't had to pay taxes in 3 years because I'm reinvesting everything. That means that you're probably living at a poverty level and you're going to experience burnout more and you're stringing things along, which just creates more stress and anxiety. That's not a way to live life. That doesn't go towards that kind of like freedom box that we started this journey to begin with. So we talk about money from the get-go. We normalize it in our groups and conversations here, and any of like the one-on-one work that we do, the programs that we operate in, because it's such an important thing. It is a tool that helps keep you going. It's a tool that helps you live the life that you want to live. And everybody has a different definition of what that is. I don't mean that you take everything from your business so you can live this life of just like things, stuff, and vacations. If you want that, great. If you want something different, that's great too. But what we need to identify is how we keep you as a human funded,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yep.
And it's a really important part of the conversation from the beginning, and then going into expenses, what we actually need versus what we think we need, because Instagram or some type of social platform is telling us that that's a status thing by achieving that or getting to that level. We just kind of question everything because it's not talked about enough. And there's just this perception out there of all of these things, which just leads to a bunch of assumptions, which has a lot of us in a situation where if business is bad for a couple of months in a row, we're out of business and
Yep.
we're looking for another job. And that's just
Yep.
not a way to live.
Nope. Oh, there's so much there that I'm just like, "Yes, amen."
Yeah.
I went through that same, that journey, a couple years into entrepreneurship with my first business and was on the edge of poverty and knew I need to make a change. And part of it's
Mm-hmm.
hearing Mike on a podcast, and that just set me on a trajectory, right? How did you first hear about Profit First?
My journey with money has been a long, like a lot of people. I actually went through a similar personal experience where money was never talked about. I was married to somebody that made a lot of money, but there never seems to be any, and we never really had conversations around it. By the time that I went through my divorce with this person, I had a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and watched my car be repossessed out of my driveway. I had to move out of my home because it was going to be foreclosed on. And I found myself living in this little tiny apartment with my 2 kids going, how did that all happen? I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah.
So I became really curious about how to even just do money better. Profit First eventually came into my life. Like, it was just years over years of like finding tools, finding resources. I eventually connected with Hillary Hendershot, who has Profit Boss Radio, who's a really good friend of mine now. And she started talking about Profit First. And so then I got my hands on that book and have implemented it into my business, helped other people, point them in that direction, help them implement that into their business. And now I own a couple of businesses, and I operate all of them with the Profit First model. And so it was a long, windy journey of like complete intensity and lack of understanding around just like how even money in my day-to-day before business life just kind of impacted me without even me being really in tune. And I just was like, never again do I want to be in a situation where things can be taken, for my stability to be taken away from me. And so that journey became so important. And I'm so thankful for people like Hillary, who teaches what she does, people like you, Amanda, that teach what you do, so that we can have this conversation on a bigger scale so that people can understand like just how important it is to understand it, know it, and like implement it in your life.
Yeah. So I know from like looking at your information before and then our little pre-conversation that you're in the process of launching a new business, and I want you to tell the folks about it so they can support
Yeah,
you, and if they're in your area, check it out.
great.
And also how you've brought that profit first lens into starting this business from scratch, because that's probably the biggest thing I hear from people is, well, I need to make X number of dollars before I can start doing profit first. So you've had the experience doing it in one business, and now as you're
Yeah.
starting another, when are you going to bring it in? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I was introduced into the Profit First model post-pandemic, which was super helpful. I had started to implement kind of some variations of what turned out to be Profit First, just from things that I had kind of heard or gleaned from other resources. And when pandemic hit, I had to completely restructure my business model for She Leads Me, because overnight I had lost 80% of my revenue and was in another position of like, oh no, here we are. Thankfully, I had adopted some practices to help me give me time to figure it out. But it was post-pandemic that I was introduced to it, started to implement it right away. And that's what they show you in the book, is like, even if you're starting with a business that already exists, even if you've lost 80% of your revenue, like you can start to implement it. And it's hard sometimes to trust the process, but it really works. And because I implemented that when I did, I've been able to open up this second business, which is under the umbrella of She Leads Me. It's where I'm coming to you from today, and it's called Her Connection Hub, and it's a co-working space for women in the downtown area of Bellingham, Washington, where I'm located. And it's that Profit First model that gave me the funds and the ability to invest into my business in a way that also took care of me. So, this is a very big endeavor. We have 6,000 square feet of co-working space that we also had to like renovate and furnish. And, it was a big expenditure. But it also didn't come at the cost of me. And I am big on business planning, obviously, and strategy planning. So having the Profit First model, in addition to just giving myself the strategy behind what I wanted to do, the business plan to make it all happen, just helped bring this to life. And now we have like quite a few members that have joined us. We've just opened up at the end of August. And so we're just, shy of 3 months now that we've been open. And it's made a massive impact in our community and into the lives of women that are finding themselves working from home now because their office locations never reopened, or the women that have been working from home, doing their own business, and have been in isolation because there hasn't been a lot of coffee shops to work from, or like some places have closed down. And so now not only has Profit First helped me bring this to life, but it's also helped so many women in our area be able to like build community, help their mental health, help their businesses, help them network and connect with each other, because you need help with your taxes, we have a CPA here. You need a therapist, we have a therapist here. Like there's so many different ways that women are being supported now. And that is because I started to adopt the model of profit first and variations of that beforehand into my business to help make my dreams and other people's dreams a reality as well.
Yeah. And because I know profit first and I know you're going to stick to it, I have confidence that business is going to be there for a really long time and it's going to help so many women in so many ways. I'm excited for you. I actually
Thank you.
my office is in a co-working space
Oh,
too. It's a pretty
awesome.
small
Yes.
one, right? But it's so many men here, right? And I wish
Yeah.
there were more women or maybe
Yeah.
a women-focused one in my area. So if you ever want a franchise, let me know.
I will. I
Okay,
absolutely will. There's lots of big plans for the future.
good. Love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for all of this that you're
Oh my
sharing.
gosh.
Anything
Yes.
else you wanted to make sure to share today?
I just want to encourage anybody that's watching today or that has found themselves on the replay of this somehow that you do have what it takes. There are tools and resources. And I know that sometimes, especially, I have just been hearing so loudly like the overwhelm, the anxiety, and just kind of like that heaviness that people are feeling right now, that there are resources out there for you. Keep plugging into resources like Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. Keep reaching out. Keep asking for that help and support, and you can make it through. And I just want to encourage anybody that's here today that it is possible. If I have made my way back from where I was at with a negative bank account and no car and vehicle to today, you can too, and just keep tapping into that strength that you have and that resiliency that you have, and ask for help.
Yeah, love that. Okay, if you want more where that came from, sheleadsme.com. That's where you can find all things Heather. Be sure you listen to her podcast, check things out there, and give her a big thanks. If you want to follow her on the socials,
Yeah.
comment and say, hey, I heard you on Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. Look forward to getting to know you more.
Love
And
that.
I
Thank you
do
so
that
much.
too. Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah.
I think we'll have lots of conversations from here and hope to have you back on the show sometime.
Would love that. Thanks again, Amanda. It was so
Thank you.
great.
Take care.